These scenes before your eyes would have been incomprehensible 100 years ago. What has become daily normal life is no longer synchronized with the blood that flows through our veins. Seen from these actual NASA satellite pictures, we have illuminated the night in a macabre celebration of our progress. Toxins kill, whether quickly or slowly over a period of years, cloaked in the disguise of old age. Warm air moves north, and airborne transport of dioxins eventually reaches the once pristine Arctic. Arctic peoples are showing major health problems from bioaccumulation of dioxins. 30 million gallons of crude oil spilled into the pristine waters of Alaska's Prince William Sound. The Exxon Valdez oil spill is like the Russian nuclear Chernobyl accident. They are considered historic disasters. Over 30 million gallons of oil from individual consumers in the form of automobile runoff enters the ocean every week, the exact equivalent of the Exxon oil spill. In our oceans, PCBs and over 200 other hazardous compounds are first consumed by microscopic organisms called zooplankton, and from there the poisons travel up the food chain to polar bears, seals, and whales, and then to people. 1,000th of 1,000,000th of a gram of dioxin can cause harm to the body, yet humans are now inadvertently consuming 300 to 600 times that amount every day, from the Arctic to Antarctica. Trees, the very living organisms that clean the air and produce the oxygen we breathe, are sliced off at the ground with the most careless abandon, as if there is a limitless supply. In North America alone, we have intact only 2% of our wilderness areas of a century ago. At one point, it had been said that a tree squirrel could jump from tree to tree, following the hardwood and coniferous forest belts from the east coast to the west coast. Global human populations have become a problem only because of our collective consumption at the expense of environmental sustainability, and the illusion of instant economic reward feeds this self-destruction. We are refusing to live in harmony with nature, and our bodies are the alarm clock. In the late 1940s, the incidence of cancer was 1 in 16. Today, it is 1 in 2 in industrialized nations. Cancer. Cancer cells are essentially parasitic and immortal. They do not develop special functions, merely developing their own blood vessel network to siphon nourishment away from the normal cells, and then grow to such an abnormal state that they will kill their own host. In addition to this ugly killer, a plethora of other chronic diseases is dramatically rising. Shockingly, now the chance of each of us getting cancer or some other chronic disease at some point in our lives is almost assured, because of two key factors that are the underlying cause: deficiency and toxicity. This discovery was at the core of a young MD's research. His name was Dr. Max Gerson. As a boy in Germany in the late 1800s, Max loved to play in the forests and gardens of his grandmother, fascinated by what he observed. he watched with great interest whenever chemical fertilizer was applied while planting potatoes. He noticed the earthworms' adverse reactions to these toxins, and they would crawl out and away. Day by day, he gained insight into the relationships between plants and the nutrients they gained from the soil. Young Max concluded from these and many later observations that the soil and all that grows in it is not something distant from us, and that it must be regarded as our external metabolism which produces the nutrients for our internal metabolism. Therefore, the soil must be cared for properly and must not be depleted or poisoned. Otherwise, these changes will result in serious degenerative diseases in animals and humans. Under a microscope, active leaf cells known as chloroplasts busily undertake the process of manufacturing chlorophyll, and the miraculous process of photosynthesis begins. These live cells and enzymes in vegetation are the nucleus of what we need to ingest to heal a sick body or maintain a healthy one. Prior to receiving his doctorate as a medical student, Max Gerson suffered from severe and repeated migraine headaches, leaving him essentially unable to function for days. After 2 years of experimenting, Dr. Gerson was able to eliminate his migraines completely by eating only certain raw fruits and vegetables. Apples were a staple. Cooked vegetables were also included, minus the fat, salt, and spices and alcohol present in the standard heavy German diet. By 1918, word was spreading about the Gerson migraine diet. But on one occasion, a patient returned with an observation. Not only had the migraine been relieved, but his skin tuberculosis also disappeared. The astounding news spread like wildfire. In April 1924, famous lung specialist Dr. Ferdinand Sauerbruch offered to do a clinical trial with 450 incurable skin tuberculosis patients. At the commencement of the study, Sauerbruch said to Gerson privately that if even one patient showed improvement, he would believe every word of Gerson's treatment. 446 out of 450 patients recovered, over 99%. Dr. Gerson and his wife Gretchen had 3 daughters, Joanna, Gertrude, and the youngest Charlotte. Of all the children, Charlotte took a special interest in her father's work, even as a youngster, much to the delight of everyone, especially her father. By the late 1920s, Dr. Gerson's fame had spread throughout Europe, especially after he cured Dr. Albert Schweitzer's wife, Helena, of pulmonary tuberculosis and Schweitzer's daughter's skin disease. When Dr. Schweitzer was 75 years old, he came to Dr. Gerson with diabetes and was also cured. Between 1933 and World War II, Gerson and his family fled Nazi persecution, eventually settling in New York. Dr. Gerson's 7 siblings died in the Holocaust. Throughout the 40s, Dr. Gerson's success at his New York clinic stunned the medical community, but also evoked the dark forces within it. Dr. Gerson was curing patients with cancer, and as a consequence, he testified before the United States Senate on July the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in 1946, along with 5 of his recovered cancer patients, and the medical records of 5 more. So stunning was this testimony that on the evening of July the 3rd, 1946, renowned ABC News correspondent Raymond Graham Swing declared on his radio broadcast to the entire United States that for the first time in history, there had been discovered a cure for cancer. The public response was overwhelming, staggering, lighting up the switchboards at ABC non-stop, out of control, unbelievable. But what happened next was even more so. 2 weeks later, Raymond Gramswing was fired from his position at ABC that he had held for over 30 years, and the Pepper-Neely Anti-Cancer Bill of 1946, document number 8947, now gathers dust in the archives of the United States Printing Office. All during these years, Dr. Gerson's daughter Charlotte worked intensively with her father. Now married, she had a son, Howard, and a daughter, Peggy. Charlotte encouraged and aided her father to publish his first book in 1958, A Cancer Therapy, The Results of 50 Cases. Published in numerous foreign languages and selling in the hundreds of thousands, this book demonstrated to the world the seemingly miraculous examples of patients with every form of horrifying and advanced cancers given up to die by their medical doctors and surgeons. The patients came to Dr. Gerson with their biopsy reports, x-rays, and other medical records, and found cures under Dr. Gerson's care. Some of these patients, almost 50 years later, are still alive today. Of course, although the title is about 50 cases, these merely serve as representatives of thousands of complete recoveries, well beyond the 5-year survival mark. And the miracles of recoveries by the countless thousands across the world continue to this day. At the time of his death in 1959, Dr. Gerson was tracking over 1,500 patients. The files have been preserved by his daughter Charlotte, who's now in her 80s. Charlotte carries on the work of her father through the establishment of the Gerson Institute in California and a hospital in Tijuana, Mexico. She loves to reminisce about Dr. Gerson's legacy.
We have some letters here of Albert Schweitzer, and they had a very active correspondence, my father, Dr. Gerson, and Albert Schweitzer, and his family and were patients. And he also expressed, in this letter, he expressed his admiration of the specific cancer research that Dr. Gerson did. Of course, all the letters are in German, and I'm trying to translate some. As well as the remarkable results that he saw, not only with cancer patients, but with his wife, who had tuberculosis, and their daughter, who had a very undecipherable skin disease. One of the things Schweitzer did was he gave Dr. Gerson a gift of a carved crocodile. Actually, this is an elephant's tusk, and the natives in Africa made it, and this was a gift to Dr. Gerson by Albert Schweitzer.
Many of the famous, whose lives were snuffed out prematurely by usually cancer, who contributed so much to society, undoubtedly would still be alive today, had they either known of the Gerson therapy or followed through with it.
And we have seen so many patients who were returned to creativity and long lives after being told that they had 3 or 6 months to live.
Charlotte established the Gerson Institute in 1977 in San Diego, California, for the purpose of educating the public and patients alike about the therapy in highly effective ways, with seminars, luncheons, consultations, follow-up care for recovering patients, mailings of books, booklets, and media kits. The list of activities at the Institute are as varied and numerous as the patients themselves. In addition to the Gerson Institute, the hospital in Tijuana, Mexico, was established over 27 years ago to treat patients for cancer and other chronic diseases. Laws in virtually all of the United States prohibit any other treatment for cancer other than radiation, chemotherapy, and surgery. Even though they are usually ineffective at best, and completely ineffective at worst. Chemotherapy, for example, does not cure cancer at all, and usually merely poisons and kills the patient instead of the cancer. On this particular day, 2 medical doctors from Czechoslovakia consult with Anita Wilson, who is executive director, about the possibilities of opening a hospital in Czechoslovakia.
You heal cancer. You boost the immune system. You rid the body of those years and years of accumulated toxins from the way we've eaten and the way we've lived. I've been so impressed with the international interest in this work. Not a day goes by that we don't hear something from a patient or a physician or a group of people perhaps interested in starting a clinic or a support group.
Many of the staff at the Gerson Institute have had personal experiences of the potent effectiveness of the Gerson therapy. Carol Beard, president of the Gerson Institute.
I first met Charlotte Gerson in 1975. My daughter was 9 years old at that time and had suffered from asthma attacks almost every other month. She had an asthma attack that lasted 7 days. When I heard about the Gerson therapy, it sounded good to me and made sense. I went home and practically threw everything out of the cupboards, changed our way of eating, and Debbie never had another asthma attack. In 1999, I started getting sick and experiencing a lot of pain, chronic fatigue. In high school, I was one of those dieters, anorexic and bulimia when it wasn't really written about. I think I destroyed my digestive tract. The doctors couldn't diagnose me, but exactly, they said irritable bowel syndrome. They weren't sure. They finally gave me a CAT scan. I had to fight for that. It took about a year of arguing to get a CAT scan, which revealed some lesions and tumor on my liver. They said that one was suspicious of metastases, but they didn't think so. They wanted to wait and see. Well, I knew about the Gerson therapy, so I decided I would just go on the therapy. And a year later, that same tumor, the one that they thought could be metastases, was gone, totally gone. And my energy was back. The pain had left as soon as I started eating the foods. It was just the way to go for me. I used the medical doctors as a diagnosis and knew already what I was going to do. Several interesting things about the Gerson therapy, but one I'd like to mention is the healing reactions. I was 16 in an automobile accident. When I was 16 years old, my face hit the windshield and I had over 150 stitches in my face. After being on the therapy for about a year, I noticed one day when I was rubbing my nose that I could feel the bone on the right side of my nose for the first time. Prior to that, there had been a lot of scar tissue and bumpiness right in this area. And I could feel the bone. The scar tissue dissolves along with tumors. It's the body's reaction to healing.
Another staff member, Suzanne Brunt, Charlotte Gerson's niece, at one time was diagnosed with inoperable cervical cancer.
I did the therapy 19 years ago, and so I can sit here and say that I'm a success.
Many recovered patients visit the Gerson Institute regularly to donate their time to encourage others. Paul Schlessie.
I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 1990 through the rectal exam, the sonogram, and a biopsy. It was determined that I had 3 sections of cancer, malignant cancer, in the prostate, and therefore they wanted to take the prostate out the next day. I told them that, don't call me, I'll call you. I didn't want that removed. I then searched for cancer agencies, alternative cancer agencies, and I found Gerson. And I talked with Gerson Institute. I went to the hospital in Mexico and talked with the doctors and the patient. After 3 months, I found that I was losing weight very readily, lost 27 pounds, and after 18 months, my PSA showed 0.06, which to me was the end of the treatment. I was cured. The doctors thought I was great. He said I had a better PSA than he did. I'm not an easy one to get along with because I'm a maverick. You can tell me something, but I don't believe you. Until, doubting Thomas. I put my hand in. Okay, now I believe it. The Gerson Institute gave me my life back.
Dr. Gerson discovered early in his research that vegetables and fruits must be juiced to flood the body with nutrients that have been lacking within the human organism for so very long, sometimes for decades. A particular type juicing method must be utilized, however, implementing a grind and press device. When the vegetable is inserted, it is pulverized to the point that the fibrous cells in the vegetable are ripped open, leaving a mush that falls onto a cloth, ready to be pressed. Once the pressure of approximately 1 ton is applied, all the vegetable's available nutrients and living enzymes flow out, giving a potent concoction of nutrients. When juice is drunk, it can enter the bloodstream almost as fast as alcohol. This juicer was originally designed in the 1930s by a scientific researcher named Dr. Norman Walker. Dr. Walker maintained that when we provide live organic nutrients to our bodies on a consistent basis, the result would be not only vibrant health, but ideal longevity of approximately 120 years of age. Dr. Walker died on June 6, 1985, at the age of 117. The effectiveness of the juicing is obvious. An enormous amount of nutrition can be captured in a glass of juice in minutes, and within a few more minutes be flowing within the veins of the patient. If this same amount was eaten, it would take hours of digestion, and much of the nutrients and enzymes within the food would be burned up in the digestion effort. Dr. Gerson required his patients to drink 1 8-ounce glass of juice 13 times a day. As you can see, an entire day's worth of juices is equivalent to an enormous amount of food, which weighs in at a little over 20 pounds a day. But they don't just drink juice. In addition, the patients also enjoy a cornucopia of delicious organic foods that exceed their wildest imaginations. Not only is the food colorful and tasty, but serves as a complement to the juices and is once again an organic medication straight from the table of Mother Nature. But just eating different is not enough. To heal a seriously ill patient, nutrition is only half of the equation. Resolving the accumulated toxicity in the body is the second half.
Gotta die from something.
As detrimental to health as a cigarette symbolizes, there is a Pandora's box of poisons and stresses on the body that are just as bad, if not worse than cigarette smoke found in day-to-day life. The lifestyles we now live have us dying while we are still alive and seem to be healthy. It is slow, relentless. Realizing this, Charlotte Gerson included a chapter about it in a book about the Gerson therapy that underlines, in layman's terms, the principles of the Gerson therapy. Within one section of the book, environmental stressors that can lead to cancer are underscored. Types of these hits are in the most surprising places. Our exposure to toxins in today's environment borders on the absurd. It is practically impossible to avoid. It is analogous to dodging bullets in a hail of gunfire from multiple machine guns. Not only are there poisons we ingest, but stressors such as electromagnetic fields and microwave radiation that interfere with the body's own electrical circuitry and rearranges molecular structuring, causing damage, sometimes irreversibly, to the brain and other organs. A typical example of daily toxic ingestion or precursor hit would be when you get into your automobile. Prior to even starting the engine, you will have already ingested dioxins given off from the dashboard to the fancy fake leather seat. Suppose you continue your journey and stop at a motel for the evening. Perhaps you chose a non-smoking room. However, Someone else has taken the parking spot in front of your room and left their car idle for a short time, even for a few minutes. A nightmarish mix of airborne toxins in the car exhaust have slipped into your room from the space under the door. Once inside, from the power switch activating electromagnetic fields to the microwave radiation leaking from the oven as it prepares your plastic-wrapped, heavily salted and preserved, nutritionless instant dinner, to the carcinogenic chemicals in the soap on the bathtub rim, you're inundated with hits. The soap and shampoo are just the start, however, of what will be absorbed through your skin once you turn on the bathtub faucet, which will provide chlorinated and fluoridated water to help you get clean. Chlorine and fluorine help destroy the thyroid gland. The toilet seat has been sanitized for your protection, but what does that mean? The residual toxins in the chemical cleaning process of the seat will be absorbed by contact once you sit down. The toilet paper will also smear chemicals from solvents to dyes into your bloodstream. The towels use chemical detergent residues that will be activated once they hit the moisture of the skin. At the bathroom sink, you may actually drink the chlorinated water from a cheaply manufactured plastic cup that allows serious toxins from the plastic itself into the water. The freshly painted wall and its vapors are nothing compared to the plywood and the continuing emission of formaldehyde gases. Over to the lamp to get a cup of coffee to relax. It is coffee that has been sprayed with chemical poisons, grown inorganically. The artificial sugar and the artificial cream adds a nice touch to the mix. The good news is that you're not going to use a cell phone to receive or place a call. If it was a cell phone, repeated, lengthy uses have shown to interfere with and challenge the neurotransmitters of the brain. The amount of radiation from the TV will be small, but when the TV set is discarded or incinerated, it will come back to you via the air, water, or food. This room contains a brand new carpet. The outgassing of chemicals for the next 6 months is extremely hazardous to body tissue if inhaled. As we finally turn off the light to sleep, the electromagnetic field from the clock next to your head will almost imperceptibly influence the slumber and dreams one hopes to have. Even the film to make this movie uses extremely poisonous chemicals in its manufacture and processing. As ridiculous as this scenario may sound, it is one more hit for your body to fight. The good news is that most of these toxins can be removed with strict adherence to the Gerson therapy. But how is this fully accomplished? The answer is organic coffee. Dr. Gerson discovered that if a patient drank more than a pint of juice a day, the powerful enzymes would dislodge poisons in the body's cell systems. And this is where the coffee comes into play. Once the poisons are dislodged into the bloodstream and absorbed by the liver can become overwhelmed and even damaged unless it gets some help. Dr. Gerson found that an organic coffee solution introduced rectally stimulates the bile ducts in the liver to essentially dump captured free radicals and pathogenic poisons into the colon for expulsion through the rectum. When coffee enemas are utilized in conjunction with juice drinking, it is detoxification at its finest. The immune system will now have the upper hand in destroying cancer or other degenerative conditions. But how does one make a coffee enema? It starts on your kitchen stove with a quart of distilled water. Three tablespoons of drip ground coffee are dropped in. After a few minutes, the burner is turned down, and coffee is left to simmer for 15 minutes. Once the coffee is done, it is strained into a measuring cup. Additional water may be added to make up for water lost in steam in making the coffee. Coffee enemas are best taken in a relaxing atmosphere to ensure maximum effect. Once the coffee cools to body temperature, it is poured into the enema bucket. A tiny plastic stopper at the end of the hose is slid back to release the air in the tube. It is then slid back in place to stop the flow of coffee until rectal insertion is accomplished. The hose clamp is readjusted to at least 8 inches from the end of tube for rectal insertion to that length. Once the coffee solution drains into the patient, it is retained in the colon for 12 to 15 minutes. During this time, the liver has a chance to absorb the coffee's caffeine and other agents. Simultaneously, the liver in turn excretes poisons into the colon for expulsion. Charlotte Gerson is not only responsible for keeping alive her father's principles of healing, but guarding the integrity of those fundamentals and their application over the years. Hundreds of holistic physicians in the United States and around the world have been trained by Charlotte and the Gerson Institute. Unbelievably, it is illegal in the United States to treat and cure a diseased patient in a hospital with Gerson therapy. Because of this, Charlotte had no choice but to establish a hospital 27 years ago in Mexico. Because Charlotte resides in Southern California, it is easy for her to drive regularly to advise and encourage the endless numbers of patients that arrive at the hospital in Tijuana, Mexico. Under the care of a staff of physicians and nutritionists, most patients who come in with inoperable cancers and with no hope of recovery leave within 1 to 4 weeks to continue the treatment at home. And usually on leaving the hospital, they are well on their way to recovery. Many patients experience the disappearance of their tumors while at the hospital, and the patients pour in from around the world. In the making of this film, one cameraman accompanied Charlotte on a random day without any patient at the hospital aware of what was going on. The hope was that at least one of the patients would not be shy and would agree to appear on camera. Charlotte and the cameraman were not disappointed. The first patient that they saw was Alejandra, who graciously allowed them to enter her hospital room. She seemed in very good spirits.
And we have a biopsy from March of last year, and it shows grade 3 or 4 cancer in situ. And after only about 2 weeks on the Gerson therapy, there's no malignant cells showing in the cone biopsy. Very exciting.
I'm very happy, very, very happy to know about the Gerson therapy. After only 2 weeks on the therapy, I find after the pathologist report that I'm free from cancer now. So
it's fantastic.
It's been a blessing.
It's wonderful. And you can stay well, and if only you want children. You have children?
Yes, I can have children, and I've been given new life now, and I plan on staying on the therapy for the rest of my life, moderately, but yes, this has saved my life.
What's your problem? What brings you here?
I have primary peritoneal cancer, cancer of the peritoneum.
And you were swollen, or what? Did you go to the doctor?
I was in Alaska, where I'm from, and I was diagnosed with, or I had pain. I had pain in my
You were
stomach.
diagnosed, how did you have a biopsy?
Well, no, I flew to the Mayo Clinic,
Oh, I see.
and I had a regimen of tests, and they found malignant cells in ascites. I had 10 pounds of ascites in my
The
abdomen.
name of the doctor?
It was Dr. Rao.
Dr. Rao.
Yes.
And he did a biopsy, and then he was able to tell you what the problem was.
He ordered a biopsy, and the pathology came back with carcinoma.
Okay. And you had ascites and swelling.
I had 10 pounds of malignant
10
ascites
pounds.
in my
Wow.
abdomen.
And they told you it wouldn't go away very easily.
They said that the ascites would not go away unless it was tapped, that the chemotherapy could also dry it up.
I see. Okay.
And that
then-
was several doctors that told me that.
But you didn't have chemo.
I did have chemo.
You did have chemo.
Yeah.
How much?
One course.
One course. And then when did you come here?
After I was finished with my chemo and it
Okay.
didn't work, and they wanted me to have surgery and more chemo and more surgery and more chemo.
Then you came here. And how long did it take for it to come down?
I lost 8 centimeters off my stomach in the first day that I was here.
The first day? Wow.
And then it's been about 2 centimeters a day since
Ever
then.
since.
There were other patients improving dramatically that day. Not all wanted to have a movie camera pointed at them, but nonetheless they conveyed their deepest joy at how they were steadily improving. To Charlotte, this day was a typical and normal one. To the cameraman, it was like being witness to a miracle. Whatever you call it, it is working. The cases of full recoveries become a dizzying mix of joyous celebration and curiosity. But despite the success and statistics, each and every person who is forced to stare cancer in the eye wants reassurance. Reassurance that what they have can very possibly be defeated. Always seeking new ways to cheer up, empower, and restore hope to the supposed hopeless, Charlotte addressed several prevalent types of cancers in booklets. Within the pages of each booklet are personal biographies and the medical records of recoveries. Many of these patients were so sick with other maladies that cancer was the least of their worries, but their living nightmares were transformed into beautiful dreams. Many former patients stay in touch with Charlotte Gerson and form lifelong friendships. One of these people is Debbie Wagner. Debbie was
diagnosed with ovarian cancer 9 years ago, stage 3B. My dad had told me about the Gerson therapy, and I did research. I was planning to do chemo, and my dad had told me about this, and during the research I found out that the best way to cure yourself is to do it the healthy way, not put more poisons into your body that would kill you. And that's what chemo did, is it kills your body, the good cells and the bad cells. Where the Gerson therapy, it rebuilds all your good cells so that it will be able to digest all the bad cells and get rid of them. I did the therapy, and it's 9 years and I'm cured. I have not had any reoccurrence of cancer. I was given the diagnosis from my doctors, and when they told me that I had the ovarian cancer, they had told me I had 6 to 9 months to live. And you know, when I didn't want to go against the doctor. When you have panic attacks, you believe in your doctor. But I believed in the Gerson therapy more, and I went for it, and when I go down to UCLA, and that's who did all my blood work and my MRIs to check to see if everything was okay, I'd go into my doctor and he'd just look at me and he'd say, I just can't believe you're one of my cancer patients. I don't have cancer patients that come in with all the oomph and enthusiasm that you have and the energy you have. And that just really made me feel good every time I went in there. And seeing the patients that were in there, I did not look like a normal cancer patient. And to me, I have Charlotte and the Gerson therapy to thank for that, because if I would have done the chemo the way I was supposed to, I truly, truly in my heart just don't think I'd be here. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I knew of 3 other ladies that had the same cancer I had, and they also were given the 6 to 9 months, and the longest one of them made it was 9 months, and they all 3 did the chemo. And I'm the only one here 9 years later, and I turned down chemo.
I'm Shantice, I'm Debbie's daughter. I was 12 years old when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. One of the girls that I grew up with, we took our summer and made my mom's juices every day, and helped my mom when she was doing the coffee enemas. You know, we'd go in there and play cards with her to try to get her mind off of it, and she would do her coffee enemas at night and she wouldn't be able to sleep. So she would wake me up at like 2 in the morning and say, let's go to Walmart.
I'm Steve, Deb's husband. When I first came into Deb's life, it was several years ago, and when we first met, I was so touched